Who's actually going to get the most out of a Behringer 32AB box and who should just keep scrolling? Is it the kind of gear that finally lets a small venue band finally mix their live set without needing a full-time engineer? Or is it a pricey Nicetohave that will sit idle in a bedroom studio? And for the everyday buyer who's trying to stretch every dollar, does this box justify its price tag, or are there cheaper ways to get the same workflow? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at the 32AB box, the biggest hesitation I felt was the sheer amount of I/O and the promise of full-featured digital mixing in a rack-mountable package. On the surface, 40 inputs and 25 buses sound like a studio wizard's dream, but those numbers only become useful when you actually have a signal chain that needs them. I talked to a couple of live-sound techs who run mid-size clubs, and they told me the real pain point is not just having a lot of channels, but being able to move those channels around quickly when the band changes instruments mid-set. That's where the motorized faders claim to matter. At the same time, a lot of home recording hobbyists keep telling me they're overwhelmed by anything that looks more like a mixing console than a straightforward audio interface. Let's break down who will feel comfortable plugging this box into their workflow and who will probably end up wishing for something simpler. If you're a gig runner who already knows how to route signals on a digital console, the 32AB box fits right into that habit. The 16 MIDACE-designed mic preamps are a solid selling point for anyone who cares about clean, low-noise gain on vocals or acoustic instruments. In practice, that means you can drop a vocal mic into any of the 40 inputs, crank the gain, and get a transparent sound that rivals a larger rack of standalone preamps. Those preamps shine when you're juggling a small choir or a band with multiple vocalists. Each channel stays clear, and you get that subtle audiophile quality that Behringer's been touting. For a small to medium venue, the 8 XLR outputs and 6 line-in/ outputs become a real workhorse. I've seen a typical club setup where the main PA feeds 2 XLR main-out buses, a monitor mix feeds a pair of line-outs to the stage monitors, and a couple of line-level feeds go to a recording device for a live stream. The 32AB box can handle all of that without you having to chase external adapters. The built-in talkback mic and headphone jack are also handy when you're trying to cue a vocalist or give a quick check to a guitarist without pulling out a separate monitor system. Where the box starts to feel less intuitive is in the DAW integration. The 32x32 USB 2.0 audio interface does a great job of bringing all those 40 inputs and 32 outputs straight into your computer, and the HUI-compatible remote control means you can control your DAW from the console's faders. That sounds perfect on paper, but in real-world usage you need a DAW that fully supports HUI and you have to map the channels correctly before the first show. If you're a plug-and-play home studio guy who just wants a couple of inputs for a podcast, you'll end up spending a lot of time tweaking routing tables for a feature set you'll never use. One of the hidden trade-offs I discovered while reading through forums and talking to a few early adopters is latency. Because the box uses USB 2.0, you're capped at the bandwidth that 2.0 can provide. Most reviewers said the latency is acceptable for live mixing, but when you start feeding the same streams back into a DAW for multi-track recording, you can notice a half-second delay if you're not careful with your buffer sizes. That's not a deal-breaker for a typical house gig, but if you're aiming for a flawless live-to-record workflow, you might want to look at a USB 3.0 interface or a dedicated audio over Ethernet solution. Practical strengths are easy to spot. The motorized 100mm faders give you a visual overview that's hard to replicate on a laptop screen. Imagine you're mixing a 3-piece band that suddenly adds a sax player mid-set. The fader can jump to a pre-saved snapshot, letting you keep the mix balanced without a second of hesitation. The fully programmable preamps also mean you can store custom gain curves, which is handy if you have a consistent set of mics you use night after night. The rack-mountable frame keeps the whole unit compact and safe on a stage rack, freeing floor space for gear that actually needs to be moved around. On the flip side, the box isn't exactly portable. It weighs close to 30 pounds, so moving it from one venue to another takes at least 2 people. The absence of a built-in LCD screen beyond the fader display means you're still looking at a fairly small surface for navigation. You'll end up using a laptop or tablet for deep editing anyway. Also, while the